You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Thanks for being here, everyone. My name is George Sweetman. I'm Dean of Student Life. I'm doing that not necessarily for the people in the room, but those around the world, apparently from the United States, Australia, some places in Europe. Where else? South America?
Lots across Canada.
Lots across Canada.
South America, I'm not sure.
Welcome to all of you who are watching this online. Tonight, this evening of poetry is sponsored by Tyndale's English department with a little bit of help from student development, but we're really grateful that you are all here and that we have Dr. Larry Hopperton here, but more than that, we have some student poets among us too, who we'll hear from a little bit later on tonight. Dr. Scott Masson, the chair of the English department, is with us, Dr. Melanie East, and you'll hear more from them in a moment. So whether you are familiar with any sort of style of poetry, whether it's haiku, sonnets, epic, free verse, spoken word, limericks, or blank verse, you'll know that something that the poet can bring to our attention is to reveal something that is commonplace and oftentimes unnoticed simply because it is in front of us. And we don't notice it until the poet brings it to our attention. And I think what you're going to hear tonight from both our student poets, but significantly from Dr. Hopperton, is that ability to reveal things that are not oftentimes easy for us to see. One of my favorite poets is Wendell Berry, and I actually talked about him in a recent meeting that I was in with our residential students in his book called Standing by Words. He says this: "In marriage, as in poetry, the given word implies the acceptance of a form that is never entirely of one's own making. When understood seriously enough, a form is a way of accepting and of living within the limits of creaturely life. We live only one life and die only one death. Marriage cannot include everybody because the reach of responsibility is short. A poem cannot be about everything, for the reach of attention and insight is short also." I think as you experience this evening and hear the words, the cadences, the sounds of words and how they've been pieced together by Larry and by our student poets, you'll come to understand exactly what Barry is talking about. So I'd like to now introduce Dr. Scott Masson to you, and he will then introduce Dr. Larry Hopperton.
Well, thank you, everyone. Great to be here. Great to see you again, Larry. As I said, I met Larry in 2007. I was on the hiring committee when we were looking to start the Center for Distributed Learning, and Larry was the obvious candidate. It's nice in an interview when that's the case. It's not always so obvious. Larry is a man of many talents, I think it's fair to say. He had a BA from University of Toronto in English literature. He studied with none other than Northrop Frye. Bible is literature. I'd say Canada's greatest literary critic. But his great love, his first love, is in writing. And he had that itch as a young boy and studied then literature. Now, studying often kills off the love of literature, unfortunately. We try not to do that, but unfortunately it can be the case. It wasn't for Larry. He applied his gifts, used them for editing. So he edited at the University of Toronto, was the founding editor of Nimbus Press, and was working in the post-secondary publishing industry as well, in various branches. Went back to grad school, studied and taught English part-time at Seneca, focusing on writing, which you're going to find out he's eminently qualified to do, teaching rhetoric, literary courses, and also worked in the IT department. Now, at the time, IT is a burgeoning field, very new, and so for those who get involved in the digital humanities, you're on the cutting edge of things. Now it seems a commonplace. It was not so back then. And his doctoral research focused on that. Automated natural language information clustering in online learning environments. It sounded out there back then. Now it is everywhere. So Larry was terrifically well placed to launch our Tyndale program, and during COVID, had it not been for that program, we would have probably collapsed. but we transitioned very smoothly. We're very grateful for that. Larry also was the director of research in various areas. So Larry's a man of many talents. Canadian Telelearning National Centres for Excellence. He was a senior instructional designer for Canadian Centres of Excellence and so forth. But as I say, I knew him through online learning, distributed learning, and he created internationally awarded programs here, including in 2019 the Course of the Year recognition for instructional design and disability compliance with the Christian Association for Distance Education. So he's done huge things here, actually. I'm not here to talk about that, although we're delivering this online, and it's not insignificant. Online seems to have no form. It goes everywhere. It's one of the problems of technology. It's also one of the benefits of technology, because the technology forms us as well as we using it. There's a problem with that. Larry's going to push back against that with his poetry, because it does give a shape and a form. And as I said, he is returning to a first love. He's written poetry since childhood. His first chapbook, do I have it here? No. Song of Orkney and Other Poems, published in 1983. No, it's okay. His second, Storie Bay, published in 2013, but his first full book, Table for Three, published in 2021, after he left here. Then he went on to do things that he loved. Not that he got paid for. Note to audience, poetry is not a place to gain fame and fortune. And the second, Such Common Stories, was published in 2022. The next one, Mark on the Line, a libretto in 4 acts, is due later this year. It's in front of me here, but it's not yet in book form. It is coming, however. So without further ado, I'll just hand over to Larry and let him delight us with his words. Thanks.
Well, thank you. It's a delight to be back here. This place was a home for a long time for me. And I was sad to leave, but actually looking forward to the new possibilities. And here we are. So far it's been 3 years, 2 books of poetry, 1 academic book on teaching and learning online during COVID-19. As of last week, I have a 3rd book coming out probably around November, called Mark on the Line, a libretto in 4 acts. And I might get to a couple of poems. We're going to see how the time goes. There's another book that is currently out looking for out looking for publishers, and it is called Jumping Rock. And it's about finding an idyllic, mythopoetic landscape where poetry exists. That's why you have to jump off the rock. But anyway, let me start with Table for Three. There's a funny story behind this book. While I was here at Tyndale, I was part of a group that founded an academic association called the Faith-Based Online Learning Directors. And we were a non-denominational group associated with Christian education, but open to anyone. And we worked on that for about 4 years. And when I was just leaving, just retiring, I was chatting with the head of it. And he mentioned he has a press called En Route Books and Media. It's the University Press for Holy Apostles University in Connecticut. And I very glibly, as most everyone here knows, will do, said, "Oh, do you want a book?" And he said, "What do you got?" This is what I had. And hot on the heels of that one, "What else do you have?" Where this one came. And now it's hot on the heels again. Do you have another? And yes, I do. Anyway, let's get into some poetry. Table for Three is intentionally spiritual in its orientation. It's in 2 sections, the Spirit of God and the Spirit of the Earth. And they kind of bleed together, but that's a good thing, because God and the earth, it's all together. So, a good place to begin. It's a little after Christmas. This is called the Feast of the Nativity. We settle like satin coats on shoulder afternoons, dark nights. Skies are the depths. Snow falls, and tomorrow on hills, children's noses run like toboggans. Dad brings coffee. The kitchen starts at noon. Roast beef for 65, potatoes, beets preserved in jars, rolls and horseradish, cherry pie, and a floor show. Hymns and poems and harp songs strike the chorus. Ballads begin and we sing. We sing and candles flicker this midwinter driving home, this silent night almost ready for stockings. You'll find as we go through these that there's a character that recurs. It's a character named Taliesin. Taliesin, just so you know, is both mythical and real. The real Taliesin was noted as the first bard and poet of Ireland, and the mythical Taliesin is known by the name Merlin. So I have this character that flits through. And the first thing you have to do with the character is have him born. This is called birth. Born of wind and wave, mother ship and the sky, and the water is beneath the prow, thrusts and sprays decks swaddled in sailcloth, lulled by the roll and the rigged hum all round. Wind and current choose, the rudder and compass follow. Your shoulders will scramble up shrouds from rails to horizon whitecaps, touch the sky, feel the rocking heart creak. On the edge of your world, reach the space of sleep. And I said it's spiritual. This one's morning prayer. Because one day I walked into the church. I didn't know it was going to be morning prayer that day, but the priest was on holidays. And so we had morning prayer. Subtitled, Wherever Two or More of You. Table for three. Always space for the third. Summer Sunday shines sweat to the porch doors, to the narthex greeting friends. Where's the priest? The process. Hymns with bits of choirs scattered through the congregation, chanting in old style. Prayer and readings, a sermon partially scripted, testimonies our chosen leader chants in thin alto. We answer the call, and the organ plays us outside the sanctuary. We linger. We talk together. Now here's a curious little story, a poem that's coming out of a curious little story about online education. A number of years ago, I was doing History of Christianity 1, 2, with James Robertson, who is now the director of distributed learning here. And the way we were working, we were in the studio downstairs, we would get the film, and then when it came to the part about the discussion groups, we would have a talk about it, and we'd come up with some ideas. Well, we were into the Reformation, and we got to the end of it, and he said, what are we going to do to talk about all of the splinters in the denominations? And I sat back for a while, and I said, ice cream. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, think about it. What's your favorite ice cream? And he said, my favorite ice cream is Tiger Tail. I said, that's great. My favorite ice cream is butter pecan. So let's go to the ice cream store and we'll have ice cream. And the point is, it can be different flavors, but it's all the same ice cream. It's all one Christianity. Which one do you want? Maybe bubblegum or maple walnut? Me, I'm your butter pecan sort. To our table, this seat for you, this one for me, and between flavors, twisting fingers, almost touching tips, perhaps a brush across our spoons. Another one with a story behind it. I think it was 6 years ago, there was another celebration of the word here. It was run by Natasha Duquette when she was chair of English, and I was one of the readers. Now, this was the coldest night of the year. It was freezing. The winds were blowing. It was awful. Anyway, at the end of it, and Tyndale wasn't aware of this, but some of the people there were old friends of mine, and they were like, how am I going to get back to Kingston? It was like, well, you're not. You're going to come and stay at my place. Celebration of the word. Come to my place. It's close, and they plow highways first. I have beds for everyone, red wine, crackers, and cheese. It's a laughing night. Neighbors stamp the snow and come in. Doors hold the snow devil dancing out. Snowed in for morning song, but nothing stops. There are shovels, we have coats and mittens, plows will come. I sing like a church with frying pans, omelets, and toasts, the table for more than two. Now, while my children were young, and I say young, up to about 18 years old, I was a scout leader. And so we had the beavers and the cubs and the scouts and the venturers and the whole lot. One of the things that my Stouffville scouts were doing was the Paddle to Dawn initiative. This was the Toronto Conservation Authority. They were raising money for conservation in Toronto. I guess that makes perfect sense. Once a year they had a race down the Dawn, and the reservoir at Finch would be open to flood it, and typically about 300 canoes would go down. Now, the only problem was there were two portages, and so our job was to help through the portages. Come in bow first at Weir 1. They will catch you. Swing your stern around and lift you out, ready for 300 more. Portage. Paddle. Weir 2 is easy coming in. The artery calms. If you haven't dumped yet, you probably won't. The portage is level, and we are stationed to launch your next leg. Another canoe slides down, another easy water to our knees. Adolescents watch the river, rank distractions, and laugh, launch the rapids. You can run them if you want to. We're behind you just in case. Then the safety sweep comes through. Okay. One of the other places I took them was Newfoundland. There was a jamboree out there. If you can imagine 300 16-year-olds, it was bedlam. Trinity Bay. Tree lines as high as foghorns boom the combers, echoing icebergs. Plovers fly. Puffins on the bob can't. Their bellies are too full. The tide carries away this wharf, this edge of the earth. Except for tourists, the town is almost as empty as ice storms pressing tombstones over. Your history remembers stories climbing cliffs, the sea call. The post office hopes for letters that almost never come. But you will come back and mumble, "See you, Dad. Paul's in from God's Cove. Been working the muscles." All those kind of overtones, the Paul, yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking of there. Do you know what a Martello Tower is? If you go to Kingston, Ontario, there are 3 of them on the harbor. They're circular, call them fortress. It was originally built as defense against the Americans. Now we shoot down balloons. Martello Tower. It sweated Princess Street to the lake, squatted on Wolf Island, reflected off the Kingston limestone. It idled the afternoon, peeled clothes, burned shoulders, stalled into evening, blanketing tonight. On dormitory steps, every light feels hot. Headlights creep for a slow breeze. Round the corner, reflect the haze on bushes, bare legs, the Martello Tower. We become mysterious responses, separated, seeking our element in the lake, drop our clothes behind the concession. Our hot skins finally stripped, approach surrender and wade into welcome between our pores and water, combining shapes, textures, temperatures in concurrent centered circles, cools our bodies into a drifting past the harbor lights, the breakwater between islands to the St. Lawrence. which one, that one or that one? Island of Barra. It's a little rounding out waves and battened skies, moor green and grey mist in crash and day spray. Hair wind-tangled drips down my neck, in my eyes flowers and grass to my knees, my feet ankles deep. Only one little road to the jetty, built as high as the sea can overreach on high days. No trees, few cars, fewer houses, only sheep dot far and white, and pack straps strain my shoulders together, heavy on hips and knees. A dog hidden on the moor barked. A sentry with wide eyes in the grass, matted fur, white muzzle and legs, and pained walk. Her growl didn't frighten. Teeth swung. She waddled slow, sniffed, wagging just the tip, tail, whole body, head turned to a hand-scratched ear. I rub her haunches, run my hands over her ribs. She nudges her snout to my nose, licks my ear, and I trust my hand in her mouth. The sea spray split pitches high over my ferry prow. My girl watches from the jetty, fading into going on. As part of Scouts, if we took them on a trip, we would have some kind of a spiritual observation at the end. So I've done these little, we're not allowed to use the word God in Scouts. Okay, so we have to work around that. But I've done these all over with the boys. This one's called Epigraph Benediction. Joy giver, you give us, all we need, food and water for thirst. Air snaps our noses in morning, light measures our evening west, and we thank you this night in this space we care for, like the children we are, children wanting to be. Okay, what am I doing so far? So far we're doing that. Such common stories, it maintains a spiritual focus, but it's somewhat different in that what I'm attempting to do is plant, well, no, I don't want to plant. I want to come in contact with the story that exists in your mind. So, for example, if I say, and to all a good night, what are you thinking of? Christmas. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. In this book, I'm trying to reach into your mind and find an anchor for the poem so that the poem itself becomes yours. And it's a kind of writing where I suppose the easiest way to put it is to just get into it. Taliesin's first Thanksgiving. Settle some coal satin-lined coats on our shoulders. Insulated walls separate the afternoon. Fading skies mirror the bay to its depths. We harvested beets and carrots to preserve in foundational dirt. And the woodpile stacked shoulder high. The stove sparks sap and heats cabin corners, cooks turkey. Dishes clatter. Wash water warmed in pots cools. The radio distorts drafts across the floor. Our little one in sleepers with feet cries, finds mama and hugs a face. She understands this evening, and tonight there will be stars. Leaves down gravel roads, rustle marshes, migrate rock slopes red and white, windswept ground, carved knuckle-deep petroglyphs. An outdoor motor drones away. Pine trunks twisting cliffs, acorn hands clenched in pockets, our shoulders, our knees squeeze, and our bodies small. Pause a moment. Our noses run unbuttressed water-colored oil-lit tables, seat 25. Give thanks for cedar and pied window with spider frost, and breathe between resolve and darkness. We're doing okay on time. Camp Dagle. Camp Dagle it's a cottage. It's a scout leader's cottage. It'll sleep 25, and it's north of Bancroft. I took the boys there. It was January. Cold. It's high water even before spring. Culverts flood the road, erodes either side. Ice in the middle, potholes, snapping turtles will nest here. Now pressure cracks the ice like this cold snap. Even sap stopped running. We collected 60 liters in plastic jugs these last weeks, 40 to 1, like water from trees. Boil it down to its secret syrup. This morning, our eyes closed, tiptoed around sleeping bags, stoked the wood stove, chopped wood outside, and built a boiling maple morning day. This afternoon, snow toffee, twisting sticks. Sample this time. Camp rule, stay off the lake. Stay out of caves. You planned this a year out. Didn't tell. Hurried ahead, made sure it's okay. Back to the birch and wait for Dorothy. An emerald cliff, a horse cart mine, radiation like a pocket watch, fissured and fractured. Our footstep gobsmacks and baby fingers explore the rock face, find samples for Geiger counters and watches from the 40s. We cower. The icicle mouth snaps and falls on our duck backs. Call them out, all tired. The syrup boiled all day. All day down, now 5 degrees above water boiling at this altitude. Tomorrow morning, pancakes with bacon and fried potatoes. Yeah, Big Ben. I love the fact that we've got, mythological characters in Canada. Trying to find them is awfully hard, though. I found one on Georgian Day, up near Tobermory. Once again, I had taken the guys camping. This was March. And my monster is Big Ben. The escarpment raises its spine and dives just north of the rain last night. Drives dark down ice roads, snow-banked either side. They've always told the story here. Big Bay Ben opens the channel, breaks winter with horned spines under pressure spots just off White Cloud Island. 40 meters long, horns on its head, diamond and fire eyes glow the night sky. Scouts have seen it from Camp Charlesborough. It's recorded. A newspaper article framed in '64 hangs near the wood stove in the meeting house with a kitchen. Outhouses in the cold crack the black night. Don't take long. Morning we'll have coffee and leaders talk. You will wake up in cold sleeping cabins with the song for 16-year-olds we have not sung since this morning, twice round the campsite. Walking and slipping, more footing with snow under the crust. The pines are birch overcast background expansions. You feel in your spine this end time clears the channel breaks, thunders visceral pressure ridges thrust up calves and thighs, ripple this Spartan landscape. Ben is gone now, down the escarpment. Our own little Loch Ness monster. This is a series that I wrote for Christchurch and Stouffville. I've written a couple of things for them. There's a whole revamp of the Nativity Candle that I wrote one year, and this was written over a couple of different months. First, private chapel. Picture someone like a pope in prayer, a tiny chapel. Altar servers murmur Latin, robes raised in personal praise. We did that in choir school. We recited the responses we didn't know what they meant, but could participate at the feet of a meditative moment. Another morning song. You can always have another morning song. Spiders seek boundaries. Transitions tether and triangulate structure. Grow gossamer fat forests with sunscreen and naps, swim to the island and back. Search for wood. Cut the length and stomp it. I will teach you to Tyndale and kindle with games and saw stories, and rouse tomorrow with a morning song, perhaps this one. I'm sure everybody remembers when they started to lift the COVID restrictions. It was pretty exciting. The church went from zero capacity to 25%. And distance, all that stuff, mass everybody. First Sunday after COVID. Capacity is limited to 25%, and the sacristy is as full as that. Live stream works. The piano prelude picks up well. Our pastor processes to a soloist, a cantor waiting for her time at a distant piece. Prayer and real people to respond to this first communion. The chalice is re-silvered. Isolation ends with sanitizer, space between pews. We are one voice humming through masks. It's good to praise with people. And since we're in church, here's one, Maundy Thursday. Can you read Psalm 22 tonight? The tenor has COVID, no time to prepare, just read it over there. But now rehearse the hymns and anthems. Our shaky parish quartet sings up the aisle to the podium. Drop the page, adjust the mic, test, and begin. It's a psalm, a poem, and the Spirit on me speaks this Gethsemane redemption on the web. And how about a joyful noise? I always say that our choir does that. Our role is to make a joyful noise. We try. We had a rather amazing choir leader for a few years. Unfortunately, COVID came along. His name was Valentin. He was from Russia. He had been the associate director of the Bolshoi Opera. He'd been the leader of the Riga in Latvia opera. And this was our choir master. His idea was we should all be soloists, and he was training us for that. You laugh. He did. Valentin never plays piano. It's just a vehicle he hears through fingers and echoes and teaches us to sing like Russian opera. Shout autistically, open throat and support, focus through the forehead in broken English. Directed with an eyebrow, a nose dip, nod the head. We get it. We are instruments. He brought me to sing like Christ's last words, alone or in a Gregorian choir, bring the congregation to unison. Then silence erupts. It's quite amazing. He was teaching a German leader just before the COVID hit. This is a very simple little one. And again, it's a scouting one. The first level for the little boys is called Beavers. And it's basically, 4 to 7? With little boys. And the mascot is Big Brown Beaver. This is called Big Brown Beaver. Big Brown Beaver builds a dam, builds a lodge for kits, teaches them play in the forest, sharpening teeth, learning tail slaps, having fun. Big Brown Beaver tells stories and sings songs. Join the dance in this wub game. Made up today, stretching the edge of the world, then the next. Big Brown Beaver teaches canoe, how to paddle. Turn them over and climb back in, ready to bow rivers and stern rapids. And the next Big Brown Beaver repairs the dam, prepares the lodge for kits. Between riverbanks flowing forward, trickles need attention. It's like the wub game there. I made it up. It went on for a month. And the only thing I can remember about it is there was a water buffalo involved. And Baden Powell, the scout founder. This is one I'm sure everyone's going to recognize. It's called Ramen Bar. And I wrote this for my daughter, who's right there. First year university going into residence. I think it's going to break every parent's heart. A small-town kid in a place you might see dragging things so high you can't help but look up, and there's a ramen bar at the corner. I put the cover on your mattress, check the bathroom ceiling, put it on your inspection form, take you for a long lunch at the corner, and whisper, "You got this. You got this." Your face, your hands hugged, tears watching back to your dorm. This is another very easy one, but it's got an implication to it. And so what I'd like you to do, I'm not going to tell you what it is. What I'd like you to do is think about what it was when I finish. Joe's store. Joe has a gumball machine on the sidewalk. 1 cent. And if you get the little football instead, you win and come inside for a prize. The bulb is nearly empty. About 6 pennies, and it's mine. 1 cent. A gumball, red, I think. The second is white. Then yellow, and the football drops, in for a spin into the store. Joe says, "I'm a lucky boy." He gives me chocolate. What's it about? There are 2 possibilities here. One is a simple innocence of a young child, and the other is child molesting. But it doesn't say child molesting. If that occurred to you, that's within you. And that was reaching out for something in the other person to anchor the poem to. And since we were just at Joe's store, Taliesin hides his secrets. It's a garbage box for pickup, giggled into the trunk. Disassembled pieces, one and one stripped, and sandpaper edges curled smooth. Oiled, left to dry, sanded again with your gentle hand-finished secrets at the foot of your bed. Pandemic Halloween. I was ready for Halloween. I had candy, I had everything, I had masks, everything was good. And I live in the middle of a very residential area. We've had loads of kids in the past. First Halloween and pandemic, how many do you think I had? 0. Leaves raise the breeze down, yellow and red for chasing. Hear them snap and swoop. They gather in roof gutters, on sidewalks, on doorsteps with jack-o'-lanterns. Most of the season ends tomorrow. Set clocks back, rake leaves. But tonight I see the blue moon through skeleted branches, still over cemetery lawns. I'm ready. Candy and chocolate. My mask says boo. But there are no children. Nobody comes. We pack little grab bags, sweets, left on doorsteps, shouting trick or treat. It was an adventure when I was 8. And we could go around blocks with friends, dress up and giggle. No worries unless your bag was grabbed and your friends took you home crying, shared their candy, and you felt like somebody loved you. That one actually got entered into the seniors poetry prize at the Legion in Stouffville. And I lost to a poem called For My Dog Bubba. Okay. Oh, it's something we've all gone through. The pandemic idle. It's okay if I dawdle this morning. I have this afternoon. And after dinner, we'll be distracted into this evening, and chocolate drops on the way upstairs. A television in the bedroom inches covers up to your nose, hides your eyes. And if you time the night right, and you can delay morning until someone else makes coffee. Window light behind the next fraction of this browsing. Get the newspaper on the easy down the outside stairs. I could go grocery shopping, or leave it to the armchair at the end of the table. New funnies, a horoscope every day, and Sudoku. Then the front section, I'll get to the crossword. Something makes the time flow slow into more practiced procrastination. Afternoon is a distraction, an internet romp before dinner. Whose turn to cook? I'll chop the veggies if you want. Did we empty the dishwasher today? An evening with YouTube videos, news at 11, drowse into midnight, waiting with empty streets. Even the church is closed. Okay, let's go. Kemeniskeg. Kemeniskeg is the Aboriginal term for Barry's Bay in northern Ontario. I was up there initially. I got them fully up online, and then the next year I was back doing disability compliance. Kemeniskeg. Slip below dark. Scattered clouds reflect a car pass along the shore. It's an event. 3 is a parade. Down hanging orange edges in the sky gray patches, stretch west, backlit forests ripple by this hasty pressure-treated deck, hanging lights and space tables for socially distanced burgers and fries. My car in front of my room. The place is closed. Nobody, nowhere, but the door is open. Keys inside. Blue fades looms. The last ripples smooth in this silhouette imperial. A car passes. Okay. Last one from this book, and then we'll try a few from the manuscripts. Taliesin on Timberwolf. Timberwolf is a lake in the middle of Algonquin Park. Darkness creeps into camp, and there is no moon. Only our occasional words jar the quiet, shape shadows in brush as broad as the black, and our eyes reach stars beyond fingertips, map light with nods, focused on this gray rock, beginning to feel cold through our clothes. Tonight we'll not sleep, but our perception drowses. Everything is safe as care and luck. Night turns the constellations, raising mists. In the moment, a tree falling in the dark tears branches, falling hard, and echoing leaves settle back. Sense has already tested distance. Will not come again in this silence. Heartbeats, swallow, stillness. Okay. 5 minutes? Done? I would be very happy to. Yes.
The idea comes, you sit down and write it, and you usually leave it to kind of like sit for a bit and like let it develop in the back of your mind later.
If I have an idea for a poem, and I'm going to get something written down really fast, because the ideas tend to be strong and fleeting. And so if you don't catch it, something, and I can write, a 30-line thing from a single image that I started with, but I had to grab that image first. I'm also a notorious reviser. And that can be a real problem. When you find you're into the 20th and 30th version of a thing, or I just caught myself. Between these 2 books, there is one poem that's in both. You wouldn't recognize him, but I know. So yeah, I keep, typically there's a notebook somewhere handy, always, so that I can jot things down, and I use it all the time. Other thoughts? Mm-hmm. Well, table for 3 is 95. And so all I did was go through and tab the ones I liked, and then pulled out ones to shorten the number. This one was murder. 132. Oh. Oh. When I decided I was going to do this book, I had 17. So it's, and my publisher was saying, I want 120. Okay.
How is there any way that you can get connected to a publisher or something like that? Like what you're suggesting?
Yes, yes. First of all, don't ever do anything alone. And the reason I say that is I find I can't trust myself. Something I may love just is like sitting there like a pimple. And sometimes you need someone to point that out to you, which means being part of a group of some kind. Now, getting involved, I've mentioned to a couple of people, I'm on Facebook, and there is a very extensive community of writers and writers' resources available through Facebook. So as an example, there are newsletters that come out monthly, and will typically have 30 or 40 different calls. There are a couple of lists that you join that are publishing all the time. They're all the time coming out. The one thing that isn't coming out as often is Canadian. Because Canadians seem to be a little overly humbled at times. But there are lots. And, you know, I've mentioned to a couple of people, if you join Facebook, first thing to do is get in contact with me. And I'll link you up to all these things. Mm-hmm. And then in terms of reading groups, well, I mean, this is advertised over Facebook. The other thing to keep in mind is the reading series that go on in the city, and there's a lot. You just have to find out where they are and who it's going to be. But there's lots of them. And there, you're sitting in the middle of a group of poets who all want to be talking about how do we do this better. There are lots of resources, but don't let yourself be isolated. You know, the time is, there will always be that time when your nose is down and your brains are going off in all kinds of, that will always be there. But don't let it be your only outlet. I have a fellow, I've known him since 1975. He reads everything of mine. And generally in many different copies, many different versions, because I revise so much. And he can be very brutal. Those wonderful little pithy lines that I've written that I just love, oh, he blows them out of the water. Gone. And he's generally right. It's easy for a writer to be too close to their own work, and that's why we do need to be able to step back and get outside opinions, or see what else is going on. How are other people expressing things? That's all open season. You can take it all. But yeah, first thing, get on Facebook. I know that it's for the old folks, but then again, that's what I am. But I know where the resources are there. There is another, well, Bruce, do you mind if I mention your name? Dr. Bruce Meyer. I just mentioned it. Dr. Bruce has, I think, 70 books out in Canada now. And he believes in supporting new writers. So if you touch base with Bruce through Facebook, you'll find that he too is pouring out information on publications. Now, of course, with 60, 70 books in Canada out, he knows all the Canadian publishers. So it'll be, he says, don't try Fiddlehead. It's a closed shop. Instead, try this other one. But he'll give you the information about the publishers in Canada. There's lots. It's easily accessible once you know where to start. Mm-hmm. Sure. Who have inspired me? Well, Robert Graves, Dawn at Winter Solstice. There is one story and one story only. Yeah, that's a good one. This one, I didn't put one in there. The Jumping Rock. Do you know A.A. Milne? Do you know A.A. Milne's most famous character? Winnie the Pooh. A.A. Milne has a little poem called Halfway Down the Stairs. Halfway down the stairs is the stair where I sit. There isn't any other stair quite like it. I'm not at the bottom, I'm not at the top. So this is the stair where I always stop. That ripples throughout this book. At one point, I had my reader, he said, "Why do you have dancing bears?" I said, "Well, because I've got Winnie the Pooh. Why can't I have dancing bears?" I find I've always been strongly attracted to the romantics. If you go through this stuff, you will find a fair bit of Yeats creeping through. More modern, W.S. Merwin is... There's lots of... Get me started. Give me 10 minutes to prep and I'll give you a list. But yeah, I mean, there are things you find you like. And then you find that, as a writer, I find that they'll start reverberating when I don't even realize it. I wrote the line, what was the line? "I'll sit upon a bough and sing." Well, that's as far as I use the quote, but that is so Sailing to Byzantium by Yeats. But it was the idea I wanted. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.